Maybe.
Coulda. All right, what's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Live. We've got Travis on the other end, JB on the right side, and Connor is on his way. He's AWOL right now, but he'll be in here before long. And man, we got a very good topic tonight. It's something that, you know, I really don't like to dive in the weeds. I really don't like controversy. That's one thing I've tried to avoid as much as possible on this channel. I try to make this channel just about fishing and sharing and information and that kind of thing. But some stuff's happened. I mean, it's been brewing, and then it kind of like I was talking to Travis before we went live. It kind of settles down, and then all of a sudden, boom! It boils to the surface like pus on a boil, and that's kind of what's happened over the last couple of days. I know it's a good visual, isn't it? Yeah. It's kind of what's happened the last couple of days. If you get on the socials, man, it's like it's everywhere. You got Jason Sealock posted an article on Wired to Fish. Got Clark Windlet put a post out.
Matt Herron.
I know last week made a big post about forward-facing sonar and everything.
Who was that?
Rick Klum made a post last week about it. I mean,
yeah, and then there's been in the BFL Toyota Series link finder, apparently MLF sent out a survey to a bunch of people that fish several different circuits about, you know, their thoughts on forward facing sonar. And then you've got you've got the whole buzzard stuff that's been going on with the St. Lawrence River and the Bassmaster Elites, people coming in on people with the Johnson brothers and Richard G and Robert G, and then you've got Trey McKinney, got JT Tompkins disqualified, and there's just a lot of stuff that's happened over the last.
Could we call it a dumpster fire this past week?
It's been a dumpster fire. Yep. It has definitely been a dumpster fire. So I thought, why not just get this all out and
roast
talk about
marshmallows?
Why not roast some marshmallows?
Get some hot dogs and let's go.
We got a lot of people in here already, and I see some of the names. I know they'll have strong opinions. And one thing I want to say before we get this started is, let's try to be kind in the comments. I mean, let your opinion out. It's all good. But, keep the hate to a minimum. And that's kind of why, you got to talk about things. You got to get things out in the open. Communication is key, because without communication, there's ignorance. And then there's it makes your mind go different places. And it's good to hear all sides of everything, because we're all in this together. We all love to fish. However we choose to do it is our choice. And I just really wanted to get on here and have a little discussion about this. So everybody in the comment section, feel free to rant a little bit, just be respectful. And I would like to get everybody's opinions. We're going to I got just a loose list of things that we're going to touch. As soon as Connor gets in here, we'll get his perspective on things, because Travis has fished a ton of BFLs, Toyota Series. He's fished the Invitationals. So he's fished some really high-level tournaments, a lot of local stuff. And Connor, the same way. Connor won the BFL All-American a few years ago, and he's fished the Invitationals as well. So these guys are Travis and Connor are both veterans in the sport. And, one thing that's kind of cool with Travis is, unlike a lot of the new rookies that have come into the Elite Series and the BPT, you didn't start out with the forward-facing sonar technology. You're coming from the same place that a lot of us are. We've, cut our teeth doing traditional fishing, what people are calling real fishing. And then we've had to kind of make adjustments, because in the tournament world, if you don't adjust, you're going to get left behind. So how has that been as far as learning that kind of stuff, and how often do you use it? And what's your thoughts about that transition from, your grassroots and then having to make that adjustment to the electronic scene?
Yeah, well, I feel very fortunate. And it's kind of like, I look back at like even my childhood. I'm like, okay, I didn't grow up with, all this technology, cell phones and all that stuff. We got outside and did stuff. Same thing with fishing. My dad and I, we'd go beat the bank and power fish and flip jigs and buzz baits, spinner baits, crank baits. And then these, calm, sunny days where the fish aren't biting, we go, yep, they're just, they're out there suspended. They're not biting today. Wasn't a good fishing day. And now being, privileged to have this technology, and you get to see what we once thought was the truth is completely not, and before we would go fishing, and if we didn't catch them on the bottom or whatever, digging a crankbait, you're like, man, they're just all suspended today, and that was a bad day. And now I'm like, man, if they're up off the bottom, I'm gonna catch them today, and it like kind of changes your mentality. But I think this age group being able to grow up and get years of experience fishing before it, but still, young enough to be accepting of the technology, and like, because it does take, like, I've had to coach my dad hours and hours, and it's kind of funny, like, he coached me in baseball and basketball and other sports like that. Now I'm kind of coaching him like, no, Dad, you're doing it this way. That's not how it works on the forward-facing sonar stuff. Like, his biggest thing, he would want to throw out there and let his foot off the trolling motor. And I'm like, the wind is always blowing us around. He's, where's my bait? Where's my bait? I'm like, you've got to stay active, moving the trolling motor like 100% of the time. You got to stand there on one foot the entire day. Like, yeah, it sucks, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
You learn to get really good with 1 foot. I know I had the same deal with my dad. I took him out this spring crappie fishing, and he set it on his boat just as long as I've had it on my boat.
Yep.
But he's more of like there's something over there, I'm gonna throw it in, and just kind of blind cast once he looks at it, which is all fine, right?
Right.
But he's like, I really want to catch fish on it. I want to learn this technology. I have it. I want to learn it. And that, you said it perfect. The first thing, like, Dad, don't take your foot off the trolling motor. He'd make a cast. He'd put both feet on the boat, and then he put his foot back on. I'm like, it's too late. You already lost your bait. You cannot take it off there. So those folks that say that there's no art to it, there's definitely an art to it. Talk to guys that are our dad's age that have grown up fishing the same way for years and years and years, and now we've introduced something that's foreign to them.
Yep.
Now, if you're a river fisherman, if you're fishing in a lot of wind, you never take your foot off the trolling motor.
Yeah.
Prior to spot lock. Well, spot lock made me the best boat controller ever because I hit one button and I'm done for the next 3 hours. So,
yeah. No doubt, and I mean it's, and I think the Lowrance active target. I think that's like the best name for it because that's what you're doing. You're actively targeting, and like you said, and that's the cool thing about it is for the people who just want to use it to find structure and go, okay, I'm going to throw over here, and I know that my jig is going to be in this brush pile. Because before forward-facing sonar, I would try offshore fishing, and I would just get so frustrated. You'd idle, you find this perfect brush pile, put a waypoint on it, turn around, and you think you're lined up on it, squared up on it, make a cast, not hit it, make a cast, not hit it, make a cast, not hit it, and I would get frustrated. Now you're able to, find a structure, find, a group of fish, whatever it may be, and know, okay, well, at least my bait is, I'm throwing where I actually want to throw. It's not opposed to like, making a blind cast out there on a point. Now it's, I'm going to hit this rock pile. I'm going to hit this brush pile, this ledge, whatever it may be.
Even Clark in his article, I skimmed it. It was a long article that he wrote. But it was, he said he never casted it at under 3.5 pounds.
Yeah.
All week, never casted at a single fish. And he's advocating against it, right? Like, he doesn't want it, but he understands that it's a tool that you got to use if you want to compete.
Connor's lurking, so we're gonna let him in, let him join the conversation.
He knocked on the door.
What's up, brother?
You guys weren't happening to be talking about like technology, like being great or anything, were you right now? I mean, come on.
We were just getting
trouble there, but
we were just getting started on some little thing called FFS.
Yeah.
Hey, turn that phone, Connor.
Oh yeah.
Turn your phone.
Turn it
horizontal.
There you go.
Like this.
Keep going.
There
you
go.
Yeah. That way we get the full view, man. Yeah.
Look at that big check box.
Usually it's Travis helping with this kind of electronic stuff. So
You don't have to be a great one with a smartphone. You just have to be good with a smart looker.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Aaron was talking about the JT Tompkins thing about the camera guy collecting any waypoints. There's a good video, guys, about that if anybody's interested. I was just watching it before we went live, and it's the guy's channel is called, I think it's called Get Your Fish On, but he does a really good video. It's got Timmy Tompkins, which is JT's father, and he's a tournament fisherman, and he kind of breaks down a lot of the story. I'd heard about it, but I haven't really researched it until just a while ago. I was kind of looking into it, but I don't want to mess it up and say it the way it's not. But basically what I gathered from it was that there was possibly a cameraman, a BPT cameraman that was, I think, in the boat with Nick Hetfield, sent a bunch of waypoints to several anglers. David Mullins was involved. He kind of wrote a protest about it, and some polygraphs were given, and there was a disqualification from JT Tompkins. And there's still some sketchy things that aren't really coming out. So I think they're doing some research on it, and there's an investigation. I think by the end of the week or something, they're supposed to have their findings or whatever. So there's just a lot of just that kind of stuff going on. It's just a very interesting time in professional bass fishing. So yeah, it seems like every couple of days or something else. And then before we get in any further in this, just man, a couple legends in the sport retired. Clun hangs it up after 50 years, and then Zona. I mean,
that was blindsided to me.
Yeah, it was kind of got overshadowed by the Clun thing, and I didn't even know it happened, really.
I didn't either.
I wasn't watching.
I saw a post from, I guess it was Bassmasters, or it may have been Zona himself.
Yeah,
like that one kind of slapped me up. I'm like you. I was focused on all the other jazz that was going on, the AOI race and all that, and then all of a sudden I see one little post on there. I was like,
yeah. Oh. And you got Frank Talley stepped down. So a lot happened.
Yeah, the St. Lawrence there was a lot of things going on in just that one tournament.
Yeah, I like that, Tony. Remember when we argued about forward-facing sonar and not, hole poaching and buzzards and Comrades and things have changed.
I want to get Connor's when he comes back. Before you got on, Connor, we asked Travis his thoughts on, you guys both came up fishing pre-forward facing sonar. I think you got a bad connection, but I don't know if you can hear it. Good.
Can you hear us, Connor?
I can hear you. I don't know what's going on though.
Oh, we can see. We can see
you backstage. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're on the screen.
Let's roll with it then.
Okay. No, yeah, I can see you.
I really like your selection of guests, not because it's me, just because, I know Travis pretty well. I know his upbringing with, fishing before forward facing. So it's not like you got a couple of guys that have, I guess, started fishing in 2021 with livescope and all that. So I think you got a couple of good guests to discuss both sides of the fence here. And, I did a recent podcast. I use the term sandwich generation. We're both sides of it. And, so I think we've seen both. And that's one thing to brag on Travis, man. I'm really impressed that, he can do the whole shallow fishing thing. I mean, he about won an invitational last year doing that. And then, he smokes people on Table Rock, catching them 80 feet deep with a live scope. So that's super impressive to me. Most people just, don't embrace it or whatever and just sit, complain, or, go through a whopper plopper shallow all day and get beat by someone using it. So that's really impressive to me when people can be versatile enough to embrace it and do both.
Yeah. Can you see us, Connor, right now?
Yeah, I can see it just fine. It just says I'm backstage off to the side.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, if something happens again, you can always click out of the link, just close out and then go back into the link or whatever. I can see you fine in your, your audio's.
Okay. You want me to try it now?
Yeah. We're good now. Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to have you guys on, because you've had, like I was talking about earlier when we introduced Travis, you've started fishing like most of us have, pre livescope and really pre major electronics. I would imagine before side scan, down scan came out, and you were out there fishing. And so all this is kind of, you've been growing into it and making adjustments. How much of an advantage do you think there is for someone? Let me reiterate. Okay. You see a lot of these vets on the Elite Series and the BPT that have been struggling the last couple of years. And to me, it seems like they should have an advantage over a lot of the rookies because of their past knowledge and their history and all their years of learning how to, pattern fish and seasonal migrations and stuff. But it still seems like a lot of them are struggling. What do you got? What's your thoughts on why do you think that they're having so much trouble adjusting to the new technology and the new group of anglers that are coming through the ranks?
I think it's, these guys caught them, different ways before, and now they're trying to I don't know, catch them a way that they're not as familiar with or whatever. Like they're having to get outside of their comfort zone, and then I mean, doing something you're not good at in the middle of a tournament is like one of the most stressful ways of fishing, in my opinion. And I think it's just, I don't know. I mean, there's so many variables in fishing, and the mental side of it is just so big. And then they see these young kids, or whoever, a young face, a new face come in and predominantly stick to one thing. And, a lot of these anglers now are like, hey, like, I know Connor, he was talking about it with Randy the other day. He said, I could have went to St. Lawrence with a box of jig heads and a bag of minnows and fished for as long as I wanted to, kind of deal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's, so what do you think about that, Connor? The same question, basically. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're cutting out a little bit. I wasn't sure if you're talking to me or not, but I think some of these older fishermen, they have so much experience, it actually kind of works against them a little bit. They kind of get cluttered up a little on if they've been to Table Rock 25 times, they might have had 25 different situations, so they might try to be winning the tournament that way. Whereas I can just use my examples from this year. The 2 tournaments I did really good in were tournaments that I just went all live scope. I wasn't trying to catch them shallow on a spinner bait. I probably could have, but it's just like you got to be kind of all in on it. Trying to bounce back and forth is probably, one of the worst things you could probably do, in my opinion. So I think just the fact that, I guess, just to make a long story short here, I think just making the decision, just go all in on it is hard whenever you've had a lot of success doing other things over a 50-year career or whatever.
Yeah, and then also another thing that I think might be happening is, you kind of touched on that, but that sometimes that experience does haunt you, because fish are moving, man. A lot of these lakes that I fish and we've talked about this before, they may not necessarily be in those places as often as they used to be. And if you go back, if you only fish, even though you've been on this, a series, you've been in a circuit for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and you fish that lake every other year, you can spend a lot of time going back and checking those spots based off past experience. And you can burn a day and a half or so chasing a ghost fish that's not there anymore, where somebody that's coming in new, they're learning the lake fresh. They're learning where the fish are at now, not where the fish were at, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So I think there's something to be said about that. And with, if they are good at utilizing that technology, they're just learning that much faster.
John's got a good point here. He says, so why Because all the other sonar are okay, but forward-facing sonar isn't. If you learned it, you should be able to learn forward-facing sonar. I would challenge you, John, that there's a lot of the guys that you maybe look up to or idols of your past that barely know how to turn on their graphs. And I'm talking 4 years ago, 5 years ago. They had the newest Lowrance Garmin Humminbird, and they knew how to turn it on and maybe look at a map. But beyond that, it was, there's some 2D sonar, maybe a little bit of side scan. But beyond that, I would challenge there's probably 50 or 60% of Elite Series VPT pros that did not know how to use that technology to a fraction of its capability. So for that individual, learning forward-facing sonar is it's like trying to teach my 5-year-old calculus.
Well, I think they don't trust it. That's a lot of it. When you learn a certain way of doing something, you feel comfortable with it, and they've been successful breaking down lakes for so many years
without sonar, without all of that.
And then along comes side scan and down scan. So they kind of use it, but they kind of want to go back to their instincts, and then forward facing sonar just kind of plays in. I think it's kind of like what you guys were talking about, or what Connor was talking about, is it's hard to go one way or the other. You're trying to. There is ways to integrate it for sure, and I think that's where it becomes most successful a lot of times. But it is hard to. You kind of got to go one way or the other on most tournaments. And like you said, Connor, the best tournaments that you've had, you made one way work.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's something just like blatantly obvious, like they're not biting deep early. I mean, I don't see a situation where I would want to, bounce back and forth just yet. But you talked about other forms of, I guess, technology or whatever, like graphs and everything. That was one thing, I included. We had the MLS survey that they sent out that everyone's chirping about. That was one thing I wanted to gripe about is we got the survey got sent out, and you've got, legend of the sport Rick Clunn, retiring from the Elite Series, and you don't see anything about that on social media, but it's all about the MLS survey. So that's my gripe for the night. That's kind of crazy in itself. But back to the topic at hand here, the Garmin livescope, you got that, and then you've got perspective that's catching on. Everyone's learning about that as well. And if they start limiting the transducers and everything, where do they draw the line with like 360 and everything? That's the question I have. That's what I really want to know, because that's a pretty crucial piece of equipment for some people right now. So tomato on that, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What happens here. I think we're going to hear some hard results or hard rules here before too long. We're going to have to, because people start selling their boats and buying their boats for the next year, and they need to know what they can put on there. That old Matthew Rogers guy, we need to get him back on. He was fun. That's a crappie.
So have you ever used a frame and square to measure a bass?
He doesn't use a live scope.
Oh.
So a little story about that. My buddy Matt, the day before the tournament, kicked his measuring stick in and didn't even say anything about it. I just step in the boat and I'm like, dude, what are you doing with the frame and square? And he's like, oh, I lost my measuring stick, so I hope this works. And I'll tell you, that black, I guess, square gets super hot throughout the day. I mean, I'd go down to grab that thing to measure one of those big old 15-inch Stockton Hawgz, and it would singe your hand. I mean, it was crazy. So to answer your question, yes, and thanks for tuning in.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. Yeah, well, you just got to make sure you catch big fish.
That is not technology.
No, that's old school right there.
Yeah, I got to net a couple of his big ones the last couple of weeks. So if you just do that like 4 more times in a day, we wouldn't have to use that thing.
Yep. I've heard of people taking like dollar bills and taping them together.
You and I had to do that. We forgot we were fishing Cedar, and we didn't have a bump board at all. So we finally found somebody and like drew a line on top of the cooler. And I was like, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in our tournaments, it's super, super important because it's under 14 inches as a keeper. over 18 inches as a keeper.
Yeah,
Over 18
slot-
was
slot
easy.
limit.
That under 14 was like, yeah, he's under, but like, how much is he? How much is he under?
Yeah, there's a lot of weight between a 12-inch fish and a 13 and 15, 16.
Yeah, that 1
fish.
inch makes a huge difference.
You can leave a half a pound on the table per fish. So, yeah, man, you got to improvise. I always on my fly rod. I measured, and then I make I can't remember if I just put like a black mark on there at 15 inches and a black mark at 18 and a black mark at like 21. Not that I'm keeping any fish,
no,
but I just kind of want to know.
You're judging that.
Yeah, I just kind of lay my fly rod down there while the fish is floating on top of the water and kind of get an eyeball for it. But definitely a tournament situation, that old bump board is important.
Or framing square, one or
framing
two.
square, whatever you got, man.
It's not crazy if it works. That's what I say in fishing. I took one of my buddies out the other day who put a robo worm and a brush hog on a jig head and caught spotted bass on tape rock. He just picked it up out of the bottom of my boat. I'm like, hey man, if it's catching fish, it's not crazy.
Mike Foster said he used a flip flop one day. He's got a 13-inch flop. That's good. I like it. So what should they do? Okay, we're gonna have these rules coming out here before too long. You mentioned the forward-facing perspective, 360. What would you guys think is a fair compromise as far as the number of transducers, the screens? Because it becomes, with the amount of screens, it can become a safety issue. Those screens do sit up pretty high, and they are kind of hard to look over.
Especially for some of these guys are vertically challenged too. So
true.
Is that what? Are you one of them, Travis?
I am definitely one of those people.
That's why he's so good at skipping a jig, man.
I'm really a great team partner because whoever's fishing with me, they just look over the top of me. I'm short enough. They're just like, you missed that brush pile. Throw over there.
That's not like fishing with Del Coven. If either one of you fish with Del.
He's kind of tall.
Del's like 7'12" or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's really good at looking over your shoulder, sticking his foot between two guys and guiding the trolling motor on 3,000, I promise.
No, I think as far as regulations and stuff, like last time I checked, we lived in the great United States of America where we got all kinds of freedoms. And I think when we start limiting stuff like that, kind of like Connor alluded to earlier, where does it end? I mean, is it just the number of transducers? Is it the screen inches? Whatever, Then what's the next step? Does the guy in the boat beside me at takeoff look over and go, man, that guy's got way more expensive rods than I do. I don't think he should be allowed to have those. Let's cut down the price cost. You can only use a $200 or less rod, so everybody's equal opportunity. I think we all should be able to use what we want, however many we want, however few we want. I've gotten my lunch money stolen a lot of times on my home lake by people who, like you were talking about earlier, can't even really turn a graph on, but they've fished their whole life on a lake, and they could drive up the river blindfolded,
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. That happens. That's going to happen on any lake.
Well, if you want to, I always disagree with the argument that of when it talks about dollars and cents, and you're fishing a top tour event, and you're fishing a full circuit. Let's not just talk about the entry fees, but the 10 months of travel and the time away from your family, and all the dollars and cents that you're never going to get back to chase a dream. Because we all know that we could spend that much time making a heck of a lot more money somewhere else, but it's not our passion, it's not our drive. So you can't. I'm with you on that, Travis. You can't argue money with it, right? Like if somebody wants to put 15 graphs on their boat and they have the means to do it, by God, let them do it. There's diminishing return on that, in my opinion. Like there's only so much that you can look at one time. But
okay, here, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. As a professional fisherman, I'm talking, anybody that's looked up to by, let's say, high school anglers or even college anglers.
Somebody that wears the shield or the patch, right?
Right. They're looking at these anglers as mentors, as heroes, and they're automatically going to want whatever they feel that their heroes are fishing with. And then that gives them that just, it's the same thing in Hollywood. You look at a movie that comes out and somebody that's a really popular actor or actress has got these certain shades on or whatever. Boom, a trend starts. They want to be like that person because that person's cool or whatever. They look up to that person. So next thing you know, they're selling millions and millions of sunglasses in that certain style. Fishing, although it's a lot smaller, it still has that same kind of aura to it to certain people that a lot of the people that are on here. So is there a responsibility for some of these elite anglers to be mindful of, and the organization to be mindful of the kind of, what they're putting out there for these high schoolers? And I've heard, Stephanie's commented about this before. There's high schoolers that feel like they can't even fish unless they've got forward-facing sonar. They feel like they don't even have any business fishing a tournament unless they've got forward-facing sonar, which I strongly disagree. I think they should learn the roots, and if they figure out how to pattern fish and seasonal locations, that they should be able to compete. I'm not saying they're going to win, but there's still enough people that finish in the top 20 of all these major tournaments that aren't forward-facing sonar guys. I mean, yeah, a lot of the guys that are really, really efficient with it are taking home, the prize, the trophy, that blue trophy or that shield. But there's still place in there for people that aren't just using the forward-facing sonar technology. But back to what I was saying, there is something to be said possibly about what we're showing the younger generation, because it does come to a point where it's money. It becomes a money issue. I mean, these units and this technology is pretty damn expensive, and not everybody can afford it. And do we need to put some barriers on some of that stuff based on this is kind of the emotional side of things?
So do you put a barrier on a level, because you're also talking about guys that are willing to spend 50, 60K just in entry fees to go fish.
Right.
So where do you put that barrier? Do you put it on the lower level or do you put it on the top level? The guys that should already know how to do that. I see all sides of it, but where do you put that barrier at? The guy that's trying to be the up and comer that's trying to make it to that top level? Or do you put the barrier on the guy that's at the top level that's already paying 50K in entry fees? Money shouldn't be an object to that guy. He may be living paycheck to paycheck, or he maybe have, $100,000 worth of credit card debt. Because I'm sure there's some of those guys that are out there just like that, that are living off of a credit card. But where do you draw that line at?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I was kind of throwing it out there. I mean,
and I think, let's take a guy, NBA player. He's worked hard his whole life. He gets to the NBA, and then you're like, oh, you can't wear these type of shoes because not everybody else can afford these type of shoes. And you don't know all the work and everything that anyone at the top level has put in to get to where they are. I mean, kind of like you said, we all have our struggles to the top, climbing the ladder. And I think, if you're gonna, if a guy is taking the time, learn the technology, put the hours in, the work, all that stuff, and then you get up there and go, oh, all this info you learned, yeah, that doesn't matter anymore. We're going to take that away from you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I see your point about the kids looking up to these anglers and going, oh, look, this is the setup that Connor Cunningham has on his boat. I want to be just like him. But, when you're a kid, you don't have all the same equipment and stuff that, LeBron James and Steph Curry have. That's kind of how I look at it. Your heroes and the people you look up to are always going to be they're going to be, a step above you in that, in technology and amount of hours and stuff you can put into something like that. And I think all of that, you know, technology and forward-facing sonar, screens, all that sort of stuff kind of falls in that same kind of category.
But honestly, at the end of the day, Travis, isn't it a drop in the bucket compared to what's on your shirt?
Yeah, it
I
is.
mean, I mean, when I think I don't know who said it
Yep.
on one of our podcasts, but it was for, let's be honest, for $3,000 to $5,000,
Yep.
you can be set up with forward facing sonar and compete, right?
Yep.
Probably less than that at the end of the day. So we're looking up to a guy like you two that are doing this for a living, and you're fishing out of a brand new bass boat that's wrapped and pretty. It may not be brand new, but on the surface it looks brand new, and it's wrapped and it's pretty. It's got the brand new motor on it. It makes really cool sounds when they start the engine. Like that's what I look up to, right? Like I aspire to be that one day.
Yeah.
And I just got my little John boat. How can I ever compete in that? So the kind of I don't know, I'm debunking the money issue. Like, say, mow a couple more lawns and save up your money, because I mean that's what I did when I was trying to buy a boat to get out on the lake. Instead of having to take Dad's boat, mowed a few more lawns.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's the money issue, but there's also the more emotional side of things. It becomes the tradition of bass fishing. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that's where it can become really personal. There's the, you know, like Randy Block, it's kind of the way he looks at it. It's a lot of it is, you know, the ethics, the tradition, the intuitive angler, that kind of stuff. Are you taking that out of fishing when you're looking at them all the time? And I think that's why that there's a big difference in tournament fishing and just fun fishing. Those are two completely different things. And people that tournament fish at a high level, they understand that. People that maybe don't quite understand that. It's totally different. When you're tournament fishing, your job is to go out and find fish, the right fish, as quick as possible, and to use whatever tools are at your disposal. And
there's one other thing that you're forgetting about too.
What?
When you're tournament fishing? What's on your shirt, Travis? What's on your shirt, Connor?
Yep.
It's the sponsors behind you, right?
Yep.
Like that, you gotta catch fish, but you also gotta support your sponsors, and you gotta do right by them. And I guess you guys could speak to this more and more. It's becoming that part of it, right? Sponsors are the reason why you're here. Catching fish is what got you here, but sponsors keep you here.
Yeah.
Especially in the lean years. Billy Burton's got a great comment here. It says younger anglers need to learn how to fish. It's fishing, not catching. I've joked for years that I've been trying to find that catching license, not a fishing license. And the more that I can catch, the happier that I am. I don't care how I catch them. I'm just happier catching fish.
Yeah.
But what I will say to all the people that love this and all the people that hate it, we are talking about 0.5% of anglers when we're talking about forward-facing sonar, because there's a ton of guys that are just like my father and just like my son today that went to the county.
I'd say it's more than 0.5%. You know, it's not. There's a lot of people that have a boat. I'd say I'm going to say like 40% of them have forward-facing sonar. I
would say that's like drastically high.
You see, really?
I was saying of all anglers, not necessarily of boating anglers, but of anglers. There's guys that just want to go out.
Yeah, well, you're not going to have, if you're a bank fisherman, you're not going to have forward-facing sonar.
No,
right.
But you're aspiring to be the guy with the boat, right? The next step.
Right. So, I see what you're saying.
I would be curious to see what that number is. I think it's far less than we really think.
I just go by what I see when I go to the lake, and just it seems like
every boat,
4 out of 10 boats that I see, probably more, have forward-facing sonar or 360. Oh yeah, it's become pretty common.
I would agree with that. I mean, my dad and I, we put in the other day, and there was a guy on a bass tracker, and he had 3 grabs, forward-facing sonar, and I'm like, man, I remember back when we had 1 graph at the back, we had a temperature gauge at the front, we had a 2-bank charger because we never had to charge the starting battery, because all it would ever run was the live wells and occasionally the graph if we were, running somewhere we weren't sure about. And nowadays, I'm with Gabe. I think it's probably 40 or 50% of all the boaters have got some form of forward-facing sonar, 360, something like that.
Yeah. Mike's a fellow Bass Cat owner. Here's what you need to do. You need to have he's got the meat locker on the lids of his live well, which I kind of like. The meat locker. I think also one of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of the rookies dominate and some of the veterans struggle is the old adage of time on the water. You've got a lot of these. You can look at like Tyler Williams, Trey McKinney, JT Tompkins. You can just go down the list and look at these folks, and they fish all the freaking time. They don't have a lot of the responsibilities that most of us do, as far as you know, a family, kids. A lot of them don't really have a full-time job. They have a very flexible job, so they're spending. I can't remember what the number was, but I think Trey was on the water like 33 days in a row or something ridiculous like that. And then come, you know, take a break for a little bit, but go back out. They're on the water all the time. So they've got access to live streams, to YouTube, to all kinds of information they're privy to, and they're out there all the time. They've got people they can call in the industry that they have questions about, whatever. They can talk to these people, and they're out there. Where somebody who's established, let's just take Gerald Swindle, for instance. Great guy, super entertaining. He's been struggling. It's no secret. He's been struggling. He's a fan favorite. He's not spending the amount of time on the water that these younger guys are. He can't. He has sponsor obligations. He's going to boat shows. He's got seminars. He's got Lulu to keep track of. You know, he's got a big farm. He's living life. You know, he's just living a normal life, but he's also a professional fisherman. He's got all these obligations. And when you have all those obligations, you're not spending 33 days in a row out on the water to learn that new technology. And that's what it would take for a lot of these guys to get really super dialed in. They're going to get there over the course of a couple, 3, 4, 5 years if they stay consistent with it. But if they didn't have all these other obligations, they could get there in 6 months, because they have the knowledge of how to find the fish, but they don't have the time to make the adjustments and put themselves in enough situations to where they trust that technology. And I think that's one of the things that's not talked about a whole lot, is that time on the water that the young guys have versus the OG guys have.
Yep. I think time on the water trumps all of it.
It's kind of amazing how
lost him again.
It's kind of amazing that.
I wonder if Thunder can get in a different section of his house. Maybe he can get better reception. He's got a lot to say, but his connection's glitching.
Man, we fired up the chat tonight.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I wanted, man. I wanted some people's perspective. It seems to be fairly civil. I tell you one thing I do not agree with. There's a lot. People always try to make analogies. You know, they're like, forward-facing sonars like spotlighting deer. That's one of the most popular ones that year. I totally disagree with that. The reason why, it's hard to make an analogy on a lot on things in general. And forward-facing sonar is kind of tricky. You try to compare it to other sports, and it's, you know, like in baseball, the wooden bat versus aluminum bat, and, you know, in golf, certain drivers and certain materials and this. But the whole spotlighting thing is, to me, the difference. Yeah, you can see a fish and you can cast at that fish, but that doesn't mean that you're going to catch that fish.
Right.
With a deer, you can shine a spotlight on a deer. You can put that deer in your sight, and you can pull the trigger, and you're going to drop that freaking deer. I mean,
you're going to put him in the meat locker, right?
You're going to put him in the meat locker.
And you better do it in a hurry.
It's different. I agree that, yeah, you're throwing a spotlight and you're able to see that animal, but after that, things change. That's really about the only thing.
If anything, I mean, it would literally, I think the best analogy would be using a scope on your rifle, your muzzleloader, or whatever, instead of just open sights. I mean, yes, you could shoot that deer at 300 yards with open sights, but your chances are they go way, way down versus if you've got a scope, you're much more accurate.
Same way rifle versus slug versus muzzle loader. You go down the line on that.
Yeah.
That because I mean, we got a state right across the river, Illinois. It's a shotgun season versus a rifle season here in Missouri.
Yeah.
So more difficult to kill something at 6, 7, 8,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have friends that kill deer at 1,000 yards. Now that's a challenge in my opinion. That's doing something. But I think it sounds like a lot in the chat is coming about money. Dreams were crushed because they couldn't make it. There's a lot of guys and Travis, I don't know about if you can speak to it, but there's a lot of guys that are doing this professionally that don't come from money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone that had the silver spoon in my mouth. My parents just, average jobs, whatever. But if it's so easy to catch fish with it and you can make so much money with it, why don't you buy one and then fish a couple tournaments and boom, you win them, it's paid off. That's my biggest complaint when people are like, oh, it just costs too much money. It's, these guys that are winning these tournaments around here, they're just doing it because of the forward-facing sonar. And it's the guys who are spending the time on the water, the guys that were winning tournaments before are still some of the same guys that are, winning tournaments now. It's not that this technology is just made. I said it hasn't made a bad fisherman a good fisherman. It could have made a good fisherman a better fisherman, but still yet, time on the water is the number one thing. It's no different than any other sport. I mean, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And more so in fishing because there's all these, extra variables day to day that you may have never faced before. But, if you spend 200 days on the water, you're going to have a whole lot more information on changing conditions than if you spend 100 days on the water or 30 days on the water, So that's what it all, time on the water is the biggest thing. Using all the tools that you've got. If you went out and threw your football jig on big game on a filament, you're not going to feel near as many bites as if you're throwing it on Sunline Sniper,
With a tungsten weight versus a old lead weight,
yeah.
I mean, I don't like the money argument because, again, to your point, I can go buy a 1987 Ranger 395 and put livescope on it. To everybody's point, if it's so easy, put livescope on it, and I'll go win every single derb out there, right? But
yeah, that's kind of what Aaron is in the past has always talked about how easy. I think he said if you can't catch 5 fish in 8 hours, a lot of people can catch 5 fish in 8 hours. It doesn't mean they're going to win the tournament, and that just kind of proves the point that just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to win the tournament. You've got to be the person that is able to find the 5 biggest fish or the 5 best fish. Even to get a check in a tournament, you could have 40. The top 40 finishers could all have forward-facing sonar.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody is going to be better at locating the better fish than the other guys that have it. So it kind of goes back to forward-facing sonar is a great tool, but you still have to be disciplined to go find what you need to find. You always hear people talk about, like for instance, all these northern smallmouth tournaments. If you look at the weights, and this, Travis, you just got done fishing some of this stuff. They're so tight.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between a 3.5 pounder and a 3 3/4. There's guys that you have to be disciplined. You can't settle for 17 pounds on the St. Lawrence River or Champlain. Yeah. You got to find 19. You got to be disciplined to go find 19 pounds. And that's a lot of times that's what separates, 30th place from 10th place is that person that's disciplined enough to not go, yay, I finally found a good school of fish. I'm gonna weigh in 5 nice quality fish. I'm probably gonna get a check, versus that guy that's like, no, I'm not finding 4-pounders. I'm not stopping until I find 4-pounders. They keep looking. That's that work ethic, and that's what separates the top tier guys from the mid-level guys in anything in life, pretty much. I mean, just you can start naming different things, sports or whatever it is. There's guys that excel because they put in, they're more disciplined in general. And
that's kind of like whenever you and I whenever we fished Table Rock a couple days this spring, and I kept saying, yeah, we're just catching spots. We got to keep going until we find a largemouth. Got to find a largemouth. Got to find a largemouth. It's like you can catch these spots and have a blast all day long, you know, on Table Rock. But spots aren't going to get you paid. That's not you're not going to win on spotted bass. You know, you got to find those bigger largemouth, and that's very similar, like what you're talking about. You know, not being content, being determined. Go, you know, okay, this is good, but I want better. All right, that's better, but I want better than that. You know.
No different than when you were catching before forward-facing sonar and you were catching fish offshore on a hump.
Yeah.
And you were catching 2-pounders, and you know it was going to take 22 to win the tournament on Kentucky Lake. 2-pounder, you might as well just write that check now and leave everything at the house if you're just going to go catch 2-pounders, because you're just donating gas money at that point.
Connor, you made it back a little bit.
I'm back. I think we're good now. I truly apologize for this, guys. I was really looking forward to this tonight, so I keep fighting to try to be on. Sorry.
Hey, that's okay, man. You just chime in when you can, even if you have to keep jumping off and jumping back on. It's all good.
It's just impressive that we got out of the bait cave to.
I think we're good now.
Yeah, I think.
I know I get invited on here to talk about some technology, and then here we got some technology issues, so it's only fitting, I guess.
This is the bad side of technology. When it doesn't work, it's terrible.
I'm over here at my father-in-law's house because my technology sucks at my house. We are.
So I've got a really good story.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Sorry. You're talking about technology failing. So I had a self-inflicted, I guess, deal with my livescope at the Detroit River. And luckily, the Garmin crew was there to bail me out. I left my transducer on the day before all the way through weigh-in and all the way back to where I was staying. So it got overheated, and I thought I fried my black box. So I always start on my graphs and everything in the morning to make sure they're working. And we're probably 20 minutes before takeoff, and it says like source not connected, and I'm not technologically savvy at all, so I was burning up the phone line to get hold of my buddy Danny with Garmin, and he's like, just calm down, it's gonna be okay. And he just walked me through a couple little simple fixes, and I was back up. But I was like, man, that'd be a really bad way to end, you know, fishing make it the third day and then have something happen. But luckily it was self-inflicted. We got it working again, so it's scary when you're relying on it, I guess.
Yeah, man, you need all your tools, especially when you're catching them a certain way, and all of a sudden, whatever you're using to catch those fish, or a big part of it, is gone. You're like, oh crap. I mean, not to say that you couldn't make adjustments and still catch some fish, but you'd be a whole lot less efficient for sure.
Yeah, that'd be
especially on a fishery like that, it'd make it a lot tougher.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of blue water to be trying to hunt one down without it.
Yeah, like you said, you went full in on that from practice, and then that'd be 6 days you doing that, chasing that bite, and then you go, oh, now I'm fishing under blind. Yeah, that would be a tough obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, Doug says when we fish that tournament in a couple weeks, is he gonna let me use forward-facing sonar? Absolutely. Well, yeah. That's another thing I wanted to talk about is you guys have fished a lot of BFLs and a lot of Toyota series, and you have co-anglers in the boat. That's been a very, very hot topic about the numbers of co-anglers that are choosing to not enter, BFLs mainly, I would say, but in the opens and some of the Toyota series. But they've decided to opt out because of bad experiences, or they're just on the bandwagon of their boaters using forward-facing sonar and how it puts them, how it can put them at a disadvantage. What's your thoughts on that?
So I'll just jump on that one. So I see how, I haven't fished a whole lot of them where I've been out in the middle of the lake on Table Rock. I didn't get to fish a BFL this year, but there's other sides of that coin. I don't think any of my co-anglers that have got behind me up on the bank throwing a whopper plopper have enjoyed that day very much either. So
yep.
Yeah, I can see where it's bad, but there's other bad situations that are probably way worse. I mean, I'll use Norfolk in the regional a couple of years ago. I mean, they literally have nothing to throw at, and that's like one of my things about fishing pro-ams. I feel bad for them, especially when you make it to the last day and that guy's going to make, in that instance, All-American or whatever. And it's just a tough situation. And, we can't blame it all on the livescope for sure. There's other situations that are probably worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally being a co-angler would rather be in a boat with somebody that is fishing on a lake like Table Rock or Bull Shoals, where you're out and seemingly in the middle of nowhere and the guy is looking at suspended fish with the old front looker. I would rather be in that situation than I would be in the back of the boat with Connor throwing a whopper plopper down the bank, or a square bill or whatever, where he's 45 degree and the boat's 10 foot off of the bank and he's got the trolling motor on 5 or 6. I would much rather be out in the middle of the great blue abyss with somebody looking at him on forward facing sonar, because for obvious reasons. And that's been going on well before forward facing sonar. I've drawn that guy that ran a square bill down the bank, and it's a freaking long, miserable day. Or a guy that's bed fishing. You power pose down, and he's nosed in for 45 minutes, flipping over and over.
The bed fishing deal would
and
be that'd be worse.
Yeah, you've strategically out of the back of the boat, you've gridded that whole pocket in 6-inch increments with 5 different baits. and
I fished behind Drew Boggs.
Right, a flipper.
A flipper. Like, you think he's going to give you anything, an ounce to flip at? And the one spot that he gives you an ounce to flip at, he's like, yeah, you got first shot on this one. He knows that a fish hasn't lived in that brush pile in 30 years.
Since the 70s.
Yeah, like, he's giving you one shot to make you feel a little bit better about your day. But, like, if he wasn't flipping a brush pile, we were running 100 mile an hour across that flat to go to the next one. And I mean, it was all day long. I don't blame him for it. That was his pattern. As a co-angler, and we've had this conversation, like, I'm not there to win money. I'm there to learn. I'm there to get better. I'm there to take this as a $100 guide trip or whatever, and it's to learn something about a lake that I don't know anything about. That's the way I look at co-angling. I know some of them make it out to be like that's what they're going to, do to make money. And by God, you're going to put me on fish because I'm number 2 in points and I need to win this year. Like, if you got to cut a check as a co-angler and a BFL, then you got bigger problems. You probably shouldn't get in that BFL.
Yeah, and most guys, most boaters are, some point in the day, you're going to get opportunity to catch some fish. I mean, it just – most guys aren't complete. I say most guys. I've had some that were butt heads, but they do care about the guy in the back of the boat. They're trying to have a good day out on the water. Yeah, they're focused on catching their fish. But the best thing you can do is you hope that your boater gets 20 pounds right off the bat. And then he's going to be more relaxed and he's going to give you a lot more shots. That's what I always pray. I'm like, I hope my boater gets 5 ASAP, and then we can just relax and go fishing a little bit. But
I've definitely, as a boater, like, tried to help co-anglers. One time in particular, up at Lake the Ozarks, I was catching A-rig and brush piles, and I had like 21 pounds, and I'm like, all right, I'm leaving this area. Is there anything you want to do? And he's like, well, you're catching them pretty good on the brush piles. Like, have you got any more? And I was like, we'll run some back closer to the boat ramp, and we did that, and I threw my jig out there, and just so it was something to hit the water, and I'll reel it in and say, okay, every time my bait hits the water, throw it right there.
Yeah, right. And that's something that I learned fishing with you, Travis, at Table Rock. I decided that I was actually looking forward to a guy that was going to be sitting out in 50, 60 foot of water looking at fish on his forward-facing sonar, because I was going to drop that Demiki rig down. Right. I had a total plan, and I got a guy that was fishing the jig at the bank.
No. I still remember that big spot that I actually caught. I'm like, hey, Gabe, I think you got one. Like, no. Oh, I do got one. I do.
That was fun, man. So Stephanie's got a question. And Stephanie, I saw you said you asked a question twice. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. So if you want to ask it again, we'll touch on it. She says, do we have more technology that we're hurting our fisheries due to the great efficiency? And I mean, that's there's a conservation aspect of forward-facing sonar. And I'll just get my 2 cents real quick. One thing I do know for sure is that it is making the fish smarter. At least that's been my experience. The fish have become more educated, and they are harder to catch with the forward-facing sonar. The same fish that I was catching in the spring, good luck catching them now. You're not going to catch them. They're just they've been educated, so they are harder to catch. I mean, you might do better catching those fish without looking at them. Who's to say? That might be the way to go. Crappie, yeah, you can really hurt a crappie population if you're a meat hunter and you go out every day and take 30 crappie. But most people, and we've talked about this, most bass fishermen are catch and release. So we're not harvesting the bass. We're making them smarter. And besides the occasional, gut hooked fish, which typically doesn't happen when you're looking at them because you're setting the hook a lot faster. You're not just sitting there letting them chew on the Carolina rig and gut hooking them. But that doesn't happen a whole lot for me. But it's mainly I see us hurting the population of crappie, if that's our mindset, maybe bluegill, other fish besides bass. But we are making them smarter for sure. And we're probably making them live in different areas too. We're probably they're relocating, which makes it harder to catch them, especially if we don't have that technology. What do you think on that, guys?
I'll take it's either a freezer.
I've got a great example of a.
Go ahead, Connor.
No, you're good. Go ahead. I got a lag going here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I have either a freezing cold take or a burning hot take. I think we're probably not keeping as many bass as we probably should. I think there's a lot of these lakes, especially around here in the Ozarks, the Table Rock, Bull Shoals. There's so many bass and so many, smaller bass that, especially in the wintertime, I try and keep spotted bass. Typically, I'll be like, would I weigh this one in a tournament and feel good about it? And if I'm like, yeah, I would, then I'll throw it back. But anything under that, I'll try and keep my limit because, bass, they still taste amazing. Fried, blackened, however you want to do it. But, I think there's in certain lakes, some lakes there's not as big of a bass population, but around here in the Ozarks, I think there's so many bass. And even if you pull up on a brush pile that's got 40 or 50 fish in it, you may catch, if you catch 10 out of a brush pile, you've really caught quite a few out of a brush pile. These fish, they get wise to a bait. They get smart to a bait. I don't think that with forward-facing sonar, without forward-facing sonar, you're never going to catch every single bass in a school. Like you're gonna catch one. You'll pull some of them to the boat. They see the boat, then they get disinterested. They go roam off. You catch a couple, and they figure it out. Hey, when that curly tail worm comes in here and all my friends get yanked out of here and gone, I'm not biting that curly worm the next time it comes in here. So I think there's probably some cases, kind of like you said, crappie or something. If you go out every single day and you're hitting the same brush pile, same boat dogs, same trees, whatever, and keeping whatever your legal limit is every single day, then yeah, you could do a serious number on a population. But I think you would really have to have a conceited effort to, to have a negative impact like that, because there's so many bass. I mean, I don't even know how many thousand bass or 1,000 eggs a bass lays when they spawn, but I mean, it's ridiculous, and you'll see sometimes, school of fry after they spawn, and it's just a red green cloud of all these tiny bass. And yes, a lot of them don't ever make it to maturity, but still, yeah, I mean, there's got to be at least, in some cases, 50, 60 of those that make it, and that's from one bed. And I've had times on Table Rock where me and two other buddies are fishing in the spring, and every single one of us is throwing it a different bed fish. So I think you'd have to really, really be mad at them, and you'd have to fish every single day and keep your legal limit and probably more than your legal limit to ever have a negative impact on keeping a number of bass.
Yeah, Aaron's got a comment. Obviously, Travis is not talking about keeping 5-pound fish. I mean, when he's talking about culling, I mean, come on now, Aaron. Let's think about this a little bit. He's talking 12 to 15-inch bass. Those are the most numerous bass in an area. And we've had Gene Gillen on here. He said the same thing. He said that's the same thing you just said, Travis. That's a big problem, not keeping enough bass.
Well, and I think some of these, so I've got some friends that are biologists with the Game and Fish and stuff. And they talked about some of the fish that they spawn. They're the most fertile that, has the most successful offspring and so forth are your 2.5, 3 pounders, 3.5, and then as they get older, I mean, you think about it, a 6 pounder, I don't know how old that fish will be, in human years, but that could be a 50-year-old person. A 50-year-old human is not going to, they're not going to have as healthy of a baby as, let's say, a 20-year-old that's in their, in their prime. So I know I've looked at some of the pictures and stuff that my dad, he's kept notes of, and I would see these pictures, and there's 10 bass that my dad and his cousin and their friend have all got on the stringer, and I'm like, holy cow, it's all 3.5, 4, 5 pounders. And then you look at some of the tournament results from then, and it's holy cow, it took 24 pounds on Beaver Lake. That almost never happens. And
yeah, that's insane.
And it was a, somewhat normal occurrence back in the 90s. So, and back then people were catching, you would go out, and if you caught a keeper bass, you were bringing it home, whether it was a 6 pounder, or whether it was a 15-inch or whatever it might be.
Yeah, Aaron, obviously we're not talking about keeping all the 12-inch bass in a lake. We're talking about selective harvesting, and humans and bass are completely different. If we do get to a point where this earth is so overpopulated, we cannot keep up with the food that we need to survive, you will see some short human beings walking around that are very malnutrition. And that's part of the problem that we have in some of the lakes, is we've all seen stunted lakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also they go through cycles too, right?
Yep.
Right. They do go through cycles.
That's been happening long before forward-facing sonar.
Yeah. So we're talking about thinning the herd a little bit.
Yeah.
You thin the herd a little bit. Everybody's got some elbow room. They can eat a little bit more. Stephanie, I just saw that question. That's a really good question. Connor's texting me. He's having issues with his phone. He's pretty upset because he was really looking forward to this. And I don't know if he's going to get it fixed or not, but hopefully he can jump back on here. And I wish he was on here because he's got a lot of insight and a lot to add to this. But this question, would Travis or Connor fish a tournament without forward-facing sonar? Why others are using it now, and why or why not?
Yes, I would, and I have. So Clark's Hill last year in the invitationals, I was fishing so shallow. I had my trolling motor completely out of the water. I had none of my graphs turned on. I had everything off. And there's people out there, scoping and hoping, doing that thing, as well as Table Rock in the Toyota Championship last year. I was running up one of the rivers and throwing a glide bait, not scoping them, not doing that. And that tournament was won and dominated by scoping. It's just, and I think kind of what you talked about earlier, growing up fishing without it, and then being kind of in the early stages of it, learning how to utilize it and stuff like that. So yeah, I would fish a tournament without it. I mean, I still like going power fishing, throwing a buzz bait, skipping a jig under a dock. I mean, that it's all fun stuff, and it's as a fisherman, there's never been a stubborn fisherman that's successful, and there's never been a successful fisherman that's stubborn. You've got to adapt if the situation calls for shutting your graphs off, especially shallow water fishing. I am a firm believer that those fish, if you're in like a backwater or if you're in a shallow pocket, that I think those fish can sense, they can feel that sonar pinging. And if I know that I'm going to fish shallow and I'm not see those fish with the forward facing sonar, I'll turn my transducer off. I'll shut my graphs off. I'll try and be as quiet as I can be in an area.
Yeah,
I do the same thing.
I really practice that too. I think that's good.
And being super quiet too, right? Like
not turn
not
your trolling motor down. Not like if you're just easing around, you don't need to have your trolling motor on 8. Bump it.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put my trolling motor on 1.
Yeah.
And I won't take my foot off of it because it's not going woo, woo, woo.
Yep.
It's not pulsing. It's just one constant hum.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going very fast, but you're just cruising.
I think Stephanie, he can definitely compete without forward facing sonar. But I think if you're on a lake in a tournament and your competitors were fishing with forward facing sonar,
mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you use that technology, especially if the fish were in that section of the water column, or why wouldn't you use it to find brush piles or whatever? But you can certainly compete without it.
Yeah, and I think so everybody's using it now. Well, that just means there's that much more, bank, that many more boat docks that aren't being hit. Because I know, in the past, my dad and I, we'd run up the river and, you go, oh, we got a boat number in the hundreds. We're not going to get, we got to pick a good bank, the first bank, because all the other ones are going to get hit by the time we get up there, And nowadays it's, you could run 20 miles of bank and not ever have somebody pull in front of you, or not ever have to worry about, fishing behind someone. So I definitely think that you can compete without forward facing sonar, because now all these shallow fish that, used to everybody would go fish shallow, beat the bank, those fish are given an opportunity to kind of rest up, which is where the offshore fish before forward facing sonar, they kind of pull out there and kind of rest up. And now I think the tide has kind of changed, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, you look at John Cox. He's one of the guys that's been able to still catch fish up shallow, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I mean, I was talking to, I can't remember who we were talking to about this, but one way that forward facing sonar does educate, well, there's several ways. One of the ways that it educates the fish obviously is because you're hooking them, but another way is you're hooking those fish that are in those winter resting spots. They're out off the bank and they haven't been messed with for a while. And I just I was thinking about this, several months ago. Is that making those fish smarter when they come in shallow in the springtime, because they've been harassed out there and they're not coming in totally fresh and dumb and ready to gorge? They're kind of skeptical. They've been beat up a little bit, depending on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, it would make those fish that come in shallow in the spring a little harder to catch. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it just logically, it seems like it would make some sense.
Yeah, I can see that. I've heard some people claim that they think that, like a fish has got like a 1 month memory or whatever. If that fish has been caught on a particular bait in that month, and he's not going to bite that. Whether that's true or not, is up for debate. But yeah, I could see a similar situation, kind of like what you're saying. Those fish before might go out there and, October to February, they may never see a bait. All they do is just live out there, eat shad, swim around, and be happy. And now they're out there, seeing baits, whether they're getting caught on it or whatever. But yeah, those fish are now just getting more information from the fishermen, just like the fishermen are getting more information from the forward-facing sonar.
Yeah, Aaron, this is the last time I'm going to reply to this kind of stuff because it's silly. He says, if you can compete without it, why does he have it? I mean, come on, dude. It's like saying, I'm going to play a baseball game without a glove.
So I kind of I'm going to ride my bike to work instead of drive my truck to work.
Yeah, I'm going to play tennis with a badminton racket. I mean,
I can catch a baseball with my bare hand. Why would I use a glove? It's like, well, because it's not going to hurt my hand, and I'm better with a glove than I'm without a glove. And there's going to be situations where you might need it. You know, it may be something where I'm not using forward-facing sonar, but I may go around a boat dock and see, oh, there's a brush pile in this boat dock. Let me just throw my jig in this brush pile, and you may catch a bonus fish. So it's not that you can't compete with it, but it's like, why would you bring a knife to a gunfight?
Yeah.
If everybody else has got it and it's within the legal rules, why aren't there people that are utilizing it?
Because Travis wants to eat steak and hamburgers, not ramen noodles and dry white toast.
If I'm out there trying to make my living at it, you know, I mean, I pour concrete when I'm not fishing tournaments. Like, I'm not going to go out there in sandals and pour concrete. I'm going to wear rubber boots. Like, I mean, it's just.
You don't want to use that wheelbarrow to take that concrete all the way back there. You want to get that truck as close as you can, and you're going to do everything in your power to do that.
Yeah. We're going to take that form off. We're going to back them across there. We're going to pour it right there. We're not going to drag it across here. Yeah.
More efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of
efficiency, that's the word. I think in the course of a year, in the course of a lifetime, whatever it may be, the more successful fishermen are your more efficient fishermen. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Somebody asked if I got that
email,
that questionnaire, that email from FLW. I don't think I did. I think you got it. I think that's from your tournament director, maybe.
Yeah, it came from Mark McWall. Who sent it to me. I had to go and like search it because my dad he got it and called me in like 5 minutes. What do you think about this? What should I say? What should I say? And I'm like, I don't know. Where'd you even get that? And I had to go. It was in my junk drawer or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go try to find it sometime in the next couple of days. I know Connor had filled one out, and he was going to share what he had put in.
Yeah.
What he had put in the survey tonight. He kind of had a good take on it. And I think it's probably a similar take to a lot of people. It's like kind of what we were just talking about. The technology's out there. If they're going to allow it in the tournaments, you're stupid if you don't use it. But that doesn't mean you have to like it. It's just you got to use it to. I mean, you might as well use it, right? But if it went away and nobody was using it, I think a lot of guys would have no problem with that. You know, take it or leave it. But
and I think all the can you use it half a day? Can you do this? Can you do that? I think you're just opening up so many opportunities for people to be dishonest, similar to what we've had at the St. Lawrence just last week. I mean, you're just opening up problems if you're going to say, oh, well, they can have it half a day and then they got to shut it off. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
So
here's a good question. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think the fish are picking up on the forward-facing sonar signal, or?
I feel like they do. I've talked to some buddies that scuba dive, and they claim that you can't hear it, but obviously our hearing and a fish's hearing is completely different. They say you can't hear it, but kind of what JB was talking about earlier with the trolling motor, keeping it on just a constant. They said that you can hear from a long distance away if someone steps on their trolling motor on like 6, that silence to full tilt back to silence. You can definitely hear that over a great distance.
Well, they have a lateral line. They're feeling pressures and they're feeling vibrations more than they are hearing. They don't have ears. They feel that vibration.
I think they're more sensitive to the boat pressure. You know, the boat actually will displace water, and then there's the visual part of actually seeing a shadow. We don't think about that, but
Mhm.
if the sun, if you're fishing in a lake that's got, let's just say 6, a lot of lakes have 5 or 6 foot visibility. We don't have to go as extreme as bull shows or table rock, but just, you know, let's say 5 or 6 foot of visibility. We're in 15 foot of water, and the sun is behind our back and we're moving away from the sun. Look at the angle of that sun and the shadow and just the boat presence. I think fish have become a lot more sensitive to boat pressure, and maybe they were always like that. I mean, that could be the thing. We're just seeing it happen because it seems to me like out there around 60 foot or so, I don't notice the fish shying away too much, at least around here locally, from what would be perceived as the transducer pinging on the fish.
Yep.
But it seems like if I get around 40, 45, I see a lot of fish go down to the bottom. And I can't tell if that's the forward facing sonar ping, if it's the transducer, like my side scan or my 2D pinging, which it's probably not that because I typically turn that stuff off. Or if it's the boat, them actually feeling the presence of the boat. I'm kind of leaning more towards it's the boat or a combination of the two, but that does come into play for sure.
It's kind of interesting you talk about the fish going down as you get the boat closer to them. I think a lot of times on Table Rock and Beaver and Bull Shoals, these lakes that are so clear, I think they see that cloud or the boat with the shadow, and they think it's a cloud or something, and they'll actually come up, and you'll go, no, quit getting so close to the boat. I want you to stay down there, like, and they'll end up coming, and because thankfully a fish is a very curious creature. Like some of my buddies I was just talking about earlier that scuba dive. One of them, he said that he found a 3/4 ounce rattle trap and was just messing around with it and shaking it down there. And he turned around, there's a school of bass that came in there to inspect it. So he's like, he said it's crazy, like just make a little noise in the water as an object in scuba diving. He's like, it's crazy how far the bass will come just to check it out.
So I know this may be a little sideways, but we were talking about what podcast we listened to earlier. And one that I was listening to earlier was talking about bear hunting in the wilderness. Like I think the outfitter has 5,000 square miles of land that they bear hunt on, connected, which is insane to me. That's a huge plot of land. The bears that they're after have zero fear of man. They have no reason to fear man. There's a population to that point. There's a population of fish. Granted, it's a scuba diver, but you would think that's an apex predator, right?
Yeah.
And he just shook something and turned around and there's fish. Yeah. They have zero fear of that at some level.
Their curiosity outweighs their fear. They're like, hey, what's going on over there? Not like, oh, what's going on over there? We need to go the other way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. That's what he was saying. Those bear will be come in within yards of you, feet of you, but they have zero.
Well, that's the difference in like go out and throw a rattle trap and then go throw a jig head minnow and see how that affects fish. One's really loud in your face, and there's a short period of time where they're super aggressive, maybe in the spring where that's really the deal, but after they've been hooked a few times, they're going to swim away from it. Where that minnow is not, they don't associate that with a negative, vibe or whatever a lot of times. So,
and one of the things that I utilize in practice is like as we're talking about, a fish is a curious creature, bass specifically. If you throw a dot on your screen and it makes an advance towards your bait, most times that's going to be a predatory fish, bass, striper, walleye, whatever it may be, and then you can obviously rule out okay, well that fish showed some interest in this bait. Maybe I've got the wrong presentation. Maybe I've got the wrong color. I'll come back during the tournament or whatever. I'll change something up. Maybe my retrieve speed. Maybe the weight of my jig head minnow. So far sums up.
Yeah, that analogy that I had about the bear was about the pressure, like you were talking about out in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
At some point, those fish never saw a boat stop on top of their heads.
I got one for you. I've been fishing this year. I've fished a lake that doesn't get a lot of pressure around here a couple times, and I've seen fish stay in their normal. They're doing their normal thing when I'm within 40 feet of them, and on other lakes around here that get a lot more pressure, they wouldn't let you get within 40 feet. They would go down, and once they go down, I mean, they'll come back up, but man, they're on to you. Good luck. You're probably not going to catch them. They're spooked already. But on this other lake that doesn't get a lot of pressure, and I know they haven't seen as much forward facing sonar because they just don't have as much pressure.
Yeah.
They didn't react all that much to it. They weren't super finicky about the boat being, within 40 feet of them. Some of them were, but there was a good percentage of fish that kind of stayed doing what they were doing, even though I was expecting them to kind of duck to the bottom or swim off. But they still didn't bite unless they were ready to eat.
Yeah.
So I kind of ruled out the pressure. Sometimes the pressure causes fish not to bite.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, I don't think the pressure wasn't what was causing them not to bite. They just weren't feeding at the time. And I think that happens so often. The fish just aren't biting. And we see that. I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit, but this is part of it, that we see that a lot with live fishing. If that's one thing that I've learned, and we've all learned from watching actual, Bass Live or MLF Live, we see the long periods of time that a lot of the best fishermen in the world go without getting a bite.
Mm-hmm.
That's times when fish are not biting. Now we can make adjustments and maybe pick up a bite or two, but fish are just like that sometimes. They just don't bite. And you always think you're screwing up or you're doing something wrong. Maybe they're just not feeding. That's a legitimate thing. They just go through periods of time of the day where they're just not biting.
My dad and I, we fished a couple times at Table Rock here recently, and we talked about that. We're like, man, if we could just get out of this like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. lull, we might actually catch them. Before 10, we can catch them, and after 1 o'clock, we can catch them. But man, this 3 or 4 hour period in the middle of the day, it's just tough. And then you talk to some of our buddies, and they're like, yeah, I'm not catching anything that same time range. And then you go, okay, well, it's not us, it's just these fish, like you're saying, whether it's weather conditions, current, lack of current, generation, whatever. These fish are just not biting right now. Whether it's a full moon, there's going to be times every day that these fish are not in an active feeding mood. And you can put a bait right in front of their face, and they're not going to bite it. They're sitting there lethargic, not interested, not wanting to do the deal.
Yeah, how many times have we said in a tournament? This goes back as long as I've been tournament fishing. If I catch a fish between 10 and 1, it's a bonus.
Yeah.
Anything between 10 and 1 that I catch is one for the home team, right?
Yeah.
I've said that way before any of this conversation would come up. That you knew because you're dialed on the lake. You know that I haven't caught anything for 4 days. 10 and 1. So.
Here's Levi's got a good statement here. He's talking to Aaron. He said, at what point do fishermen say enough is enough? Hypothetically, what if it gets to the point where your electronics are telling you the length and the weight of the fish on the screen? I think one thing that Bass and MLF let slide, I think they underestimated how much forward-facing sonar was going to become popular, how big it was going to get, and how useful and how powerful of a tool it is. I think kind of like we were talking about Clark Windlet had posted something today talking about his letter that he wrote to Bass, because they're doing this. They have a technology committee and they're getting input from all the anglers over there. He wrote his letter and he posted it. If you haven't read it, check it out. It's on his Facebook page. But he talked about his thoughts on forward-facing sonar. But if you go back 3 years ago, he posted a video, I believe it was on the Garmin site, where he talks about how valuable forward-facing sonar was for him in winning the Angler of the Year. So at that point, I don't think he realized how instrumental that technology would be. And I think that's where these big organizations have kind of messed up. We're kind of too far into that whole thing to take it back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. I mean, you just can't. It's too much. You can put restrictions and limitations on what's already out. But I think to your question there, they probably do need to pay really close attention to what is coming down the pipe and how is it going to affect, because this is just going to be an ongoing thing. One thing they did that I was kind of surprised, but it kind of tells you the tell of the time or tell the tape or whatever is the power brakes, the crappie brakes that people are putting on the trolling motors. They banned those. I think that was them saying, okay, we're kind of drawing somewhat of a line in the sand. I know there's more technology coming, but we want to stop it somewhere or slow it down. I think that was their way of saying, hey, we gotta do something eventually.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, at some point there's got to be possibly, if it got that advanced, which I'm sure some of these electronics companies are working on some crazy stuff that we can't even fathom. I mean, I remember when side scan came out, we're like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Like we can see everything out beside the boat. They'll never be able to come out with something better than this. And then they come out with the 360 and then the forward-facing sonar and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's all, I think up to this point, it's all great technology. I think the positives outweigh the negatives. But yeah, you do have to look at it in with an end goal kind of perspective of, okay, is there a point in which we say, okay, this is too much, we got to bring it back?
Mm-hmm.
I agree, Mike. I want to do so that shows the bites in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've seen the Devil Scope 666 transducer that's supposed to. I was kind of disappointed it didn't come out the classic like it was supposed to. But
not the classic or iCast?
Maybe
neither or.
Next year.
Maybe next year.
You're ahead of your time, Gabe. You got a time.
This whole conversation's been about technology. You'd be shocked probably what Garmin and Lowrance and Humminbird have in their back pocket, because there's stuff to everybody's point on here about what if it's already there. I promise you there's AI that's already integrated into this stuff, and it's all about it. They got to make it financially available to people.
Walk before they can run. They got to jog before they can run. Yeah, and those companies, they've got 5-year, 10-year plans that have, the technology is probably already developed and they've already got it working. Some crazy stuff that maybe the next step is it's 3D. You can see the entire water column, not just a little sliver here. You can see a much wider area with more detail. Who knows what all they've got working on?
Hey, why not? Here's a polarizing topic. Why not just open it wide open? Do whatever the hell you want to do.
It's kind of how it is right now.
If you want to run a Bass Cat with a 450 on it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're saying
run it wide open, like no limitations.
They've got a Bass Cat with a 500 on it now.
I know, I saw that.
Holy smokes!
Do you want to drive it, Travis?
Yes, I want to drive it, but I think it'd be one of those that's like, okay, we did it once. Thank God it didn't end poorly, and you just kind of bless things and go, yeah, I did that.
You'd want to be on the water on the right day, probably a winter day with no pleasure boats out and super slick.
Yeah,
well,
slick. Hasn't rained recently. There's not a risk of big old log this far under the water. Yeah. They said that boat ran. I think they said legally they could say 103.
Legally, they said 100.
Jesus.
Well, there's boats that run
allegedly they said it would run faster than that.
There's boats that run faster than that.
Yeah,
with a 250 on it.
Yeah, some Allisons and
bullets. No. You gotta have everything dialed right.
there's not a lot of motor in the water at that point.
Yeah.
Well,
heck, look at hold on. Look at some of the old boats. But look at some of the old boats, like the old Rangers, with the 150s on them. There wasn't a boat in the water. It was just motor.
Back when they could bring 10 pounds of tackle.
Uh-huh.
How many pounds of tackle do we have in our boats right now? I know. I'm like, man, Dad, my boat's not running like I think it should. He goes, have you looked at the front compartment? Like, yeah, what's wrong with it? He's like, it's full of soft plastics. You go, well, okay. That's probably why it's not running very good.
I mean, I opened up Pandora's box by saying that we can just open it wide open.
Okay, here's what this is what I would like to see. This would be kind of fun to go down. I would like to. I heard rumors of BPT possibly, they fish 3 periods, possibly making one of those periods a non-forward facing sonar, non-livescope. That'd be kind of cool. That'd be fun. I would also like to see in the elites, just to see. I think it would be interesting. Make 3 of the tournaments no forward facing sonar. So or 360. Like you could have your side scan, down scan in 2D. And you could have those at the console, and you could have them up front if you wanted to. But no 360, no forward-facing sonar for 3 tournaments.
Yeah,
I think that would be. I really think that would be interesting to see the angler of the year, how it panned out. You'd have a little bit of a variety. If the same people that are dominating with forward-facing sonar would still be in the top, 20 or 30 without it, there'd be a lot of variables that I think that would be eye-opening to some people. I mean,
I think, something like that, similar to like what the MLF Cup, when they first came out, where it was, okay, we got these guys, they just show up to a hotel, they hop in the truck, we take them to a lake, they get 15 minutes, then go. I think stuff like that, that would probably be a better, like, made for TV kind of deal, in my opinion. Because I remember you couldn't wait to DVR those, and as soon as it came on, you were watching that.
Yeah, that was fun, man. I remember that. I had the Mo Outdoors subscription. You could watch them at will. I spent a lot of
time. Yeah.
A lot. I was up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning a lot of times watching that stuff. This is like kind of before I did my YouTube channel, but I spent a lot of time watching that stuff. It was fun.
Yeah. Phil, I struggle with the spinning rod still. I've adapted a lot of bait casters to throw stuff, but I think I got 3 spinning rods now, so I only need 1.
Moving on up, and some of the BFS stuff. I know that I drew a coingler like the Ozarks, and he was I think it was like 10-pound line on the bait caster, but he was skipping some like very, very light baits, and I was like, dude, that is impressive. So, and I'm sure there'll probably be some like crossover with that sort of stuff with the forward facing sonar, with a guy who might say, you know what, I'm good with a bait caster, I'm not that good with a spinning rod. I'll do this with a bait caster and figure it out.
Yep. I've gotten, I'll be honest with you, like making that cast with a spinning rod now to my target, I am now, again, we're looking down, we're staring at a screen, right? But I can make that cast, to a 4 or 5 foot area pretty consistently wherever my foot is pointed. I've gotten really good at that. I can't do that with a bait caster anymore. So I'm better with the spinning rod making that bomb cast out there.
Making that blind cast at the 23-degree angle here.
And feathering it with your hand here.
Yeah.
Getting it down. So I've become pretty efficient with that. But I still remember how to skip and flip and pitch and do all those other things that are, apparently irrelevant now. But I absolutely
fish don't bite those baits now. Who knew?
I mean, but I still absolutely love throwing 65-pound braid in a mat and watching it go dong. It's like, I don't care if it's a 12-incher. He's gonna pay for all the rest of them because he's gonna go to the moon and back. As somebody said a while ago with Rick Pierce running that 500. So
Well, here's another thing of concern based off the forward-facing sonar is the tackle industry. There's been a downturn in tackle sales. You can ask anybody that's in the industry, they'll tell you. Part of that is definitely because of COVID. Everything ramped up. Everything was hard to find. You had so many more people that got outside into the outdoors. So tackle sales were through the roof. I mean, it was literally the good old days, the heyday. They were selling stuff left and right.
The most people fishing ever, I think.
Yeah, and that's crashed.
Yep.
We're in the valley of that. And you've also got, it's kind of linked up with the advent of forward-facing sonar, the spinning rods like you're talking about. And they're hard baits. A lot of stuff's just not selling like it was for the reason we just talked about, the COVID. But I think even if you took COVID out of that, I think there is an effect on the fishing industry based off of forward-facing sonar.
It's like the perfect storm though, right?
Yeah. And one of the reasons is, there's a couple of reasons. One, obviously, there's not a lot of people, not as many people are fishing some of the traditional baits using the forward-facing sonar. They're learning how to, and you certainly can use it. I think that people aren't using it with those traditional baits are missing out because there's a great opportunity there, but a lot of people aren't. Secondly, they're seeing what they're casting into, so they're not getting hung up as much and losing stuff. Yep. They can see when their bait is a foot over that brush pile, so they keep it a foot over that brush pile. You couldn't see before when you're just throwing out a dot on a graph. You don't know how deep exactly you are. I mean, even the best people at counting stuff down can still be off a foot or two, and you're getting snagged and you're losing your stuff. Yep. That's not happening.
Yeah, Darius, I don't lose too many $25 jerk baits anymore.
Yeah. I remember hated throwing an A-rig because you'd sit down, rig one all the way up, spend 10 minutes, find jig heads, find swim baits, tie the thing on, stand up there, throw it out there, hang it up in a brush pile and break it off. And you're like,
First cast.
Yeah. First cast, you're going to need fresh hooks, and you're like, oh, okay, forget this. But now, I mean, you can fish an A-rig till you're literally breaking the arms off of it because you're seeing exactly where that bait is at all times.
Right. And there's been an uptick, like you just said, in spinning rod sales. There's a lot of guys that, and I think the reason for that is it's not just because a lot of people are throwing a jig head minnow or a Nico rig or a little, small swim bait. But most people if you had 15 rods, 14 of them were bait casters or 13 of them were bait casters. I've always fished spinning rods. You give me crap about that ever since we've known each other. But I've always been a fan of spinning rods and finesse. Back when I fished in the Bass Club long time ago, man, I was probably the only guy that actually threw a lot of stuff on spinning rods. I just always liked spinning rods.
You had like the first high-end spinning rod that I ever saw. Like everything else was like a lightning rod from Walmart because we didn't want to spend a bunch of money on a dang old spinning rod. Yep. And you had like what's that black one you got? The black handled one. You still got it? How you do?
Was
that
it
Shimano? Like,
well, I had a Bass Pro Shops, the Johnny Morris.
No, this was
Was it a St. Croix maybe?
I don't remember. Maybe it was like super, super high end, super sensitive.
Yeah, because I fished it a lot. But I think what's going on is you're seeing a lot of people have a void on the spinning reel side, or spinning rod side of their arsenal. So they're already stocked up on bait casting rods. Yep. So they're adding spinning gear. So you're seeing a lot more spinning rods sold too. Obviously jig head minnows and things like that and jerk baits are selling pretty good. Somebody was just saying that, but a lot of your other stuff is just not selling.
Yep. But I remember my dad and I, we had one spinning reel or spinning setup between the two of us, and it was a $20. It was like a game day series Academy rod. And it was a razorback, red, and then it tapered to a white tip and 7-foot medium, and that was our spinning rod, and of course it never got taken out of the rod locker. And then when I bought my first good setup, I was like, oh, throwing a spinning rod doesn't suck. Like, this is actually pretty fun, If you get good equipment, it's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, the drag actually comes out and it does go.
Well, that and that rod. I mean, if you felt the bite on it, that dude had hit it pretty hard. You know, I mean, it was
right.
it was a clunky 7-foot spinning rod. Like you're not feeling many light bites on it.
Well, spinning rods in my day, like you didn't spend a lot of money on them for one.
Nope.
It was a sub $50 probably setup, if not rod. And if I did have a decent spinning rod, it was a light or a medium light for pan fishing. Stuff in the grease, right? It wasn't for. It was going trout fishing. It was going crappie, bluegill. You know, maybe a spin cast for taking the kids out, but that was like the closest thing to a sissy stick that we got to. We never used it for bass. Now, heck, I'm using some of my better crappie rods for bass fishing because they have the right tip on them.
Yeah.
So, and I can launch that little bitty bait.
Yeah.
Freaking country mile. So
yeah, and you know, I've been taking a spinning rod with a popper on it for schooling bass because
you can
get it out there way farther. And you're not going to freaking backlash. That always happens. You got braid on a bait caster. They come up, you're excited. It goes like 20 feet and just stops. And you're like, damn it.
Yeah,
that spinning reel just keeps going, man.
Yeah, they're like 10 foot outside of your comfortable range. And you're like, I got to get a little bit more on.
Yeah, and you give it the juice and it just doesn't work, man. Yeah. And then it's over because you're picking you're picking your backlash out and you just blew it.
Yeah.
Good luck on St. Clair, Mike. Mike's going to St. Clair next week. So
sweet.
That'll be fun.
I don't think he's going to have any problems catching fish.
I hope you're right, Phil. I sure like catching him on a jig and a flipping bait. So
yeah, I think this comment, you know, going back to kind of what I was saying earlier, you know, there's fewer people that are fishing the bank, that are fishing the more traditional style stuff, the crankbaits, you know, flipping the jig, throwing a buzz bait, that sort of stuff. So yeah, I definitely think that there'll be a kind of shifting of the guard, if you will.
Yep, I agree. I think that's going to take longer than we all expect, though. It's not going to.
No,
it's not going to be next spring. Everybody's going to, you know, because there's still guys like called it the sandwich generation. Like there's still a bunch of us that really enjoy going looking at them up shallow or flipping blindly down a bank and knowing that the line's going to jump. Like that's still passion.
Like you said, dude, when that thing goes boom, yeah. I don't care if it's a 12-incher or a 5-pounder. Yeah, that's what
you're giving them the beans no matter what, right? Like, I mean, how many of those 12-inchers have went past your head?
Gonzo, yeah. I've inadvertently sent some to the grave prematurely when they fly back and bounce off the side of the boat. You're like, no.
Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit, and then I'm a little more reckless with those than forward-facing sonar's going to do.
Yeah, Phil says so if traditional bait sales are down, does that mean that the baits they're going to see less of those baits? I just think people aren't losing as many of them, possibly. And Doug's not on here anymore from Auto Trieve. I haven't talked about this in a while, but that right there has saved me. I don't know if you know about Travis, if you know about the Auto Trieve system, but it's like it's a retractable thing that sits underneath the deck of your boat.
Yeah, I think it like mounts to your like butt seat or
or you can drill through the boat. But Doug that's on here, he's the guy that makes those, a buddy of mine. That sucker right there has saved me more money than forward-facing sonar. It's unbelievable.
You probably paid for your forward-facing sonar.
I swear, honest to God, truth. Yeah. Every single time I go fishing, I use it 5 to 10 times, and most of the time, the only time I don't get my stuff back, and Doug will tell you this too, is when you're fishing something like a jig and it gets wedged in a rock, and it's down, like your line gets in a rock, and you keep going. And the hound dog can't get to it. Yeah. Because I use the Jewel hound dog lure retriever and it can't get to it. But if you kind of get hung up and you don't wedge it in there, you can still a lot of times you can still get it back. But man, if it's just on a piece of wood or something, you're going to get it back. I mean, or the other thing is like fishing line. Sometimes you can't get it with fishing line.
Yep.
If you got a treble hook bait, you're typically, as long as you can get a hook on that hound dog,
you can rip it out.
You can rip it out or pull.
Yeah.
I mean, I pulled up brush piles.
Right now. Yeah, and that's those things. Yeah, you talk about a wise investment. Yeah, you get back a megabass jerkbait, money well spent. It's worth it right there. You're playing on money.
You keep 2 megabass jerkbaits from the lake eating them. You paid for your auto Trieve.
Yeah.
I honestly think that, and I don't see why this isn't happening, but this may be a conspiracy theory with the tackle industry, but I think that should be an option on every boat that comes out. I mean, I think you've got all those other gadgets and stuff you can put on there. It's so
inconspicuous. Like you wouldn't even know you got it on your boat if it's positioned in the right spot.
Well, and people say I've already got a lure retriever. I use a reel.
You don't have one like that.
You just don't use it as much. It's a pain in the butt. It's like a one-handed system that is super easy. The wind's blowing. You're messing with that reel that's on the deck of your boat, and
that's the problem with the reel. The wind's blowing. You got to be like, hey, you care to grab that real quick?
It's almost a 2-person job.
Bring it up here. Yeah.
There's a lot of 4-letter words that get said when I had my reel. But by the time there's 12 rods sitting on the deck of the boat and the line's wrapped up in those, and you're trying to like you said, the wind's blowing, all the negative things are happening.
Yep.
And now I'm trying to reel up a brush pile, and I got crap all over the front of my deck, and I mean it's just first world problems that we're talking about tonight.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about one more topic, and then we'll wrap this up. And it's this is perfect timing because
flipping boat docks.
No, not flipping boat docks. No, we're not going there. But the kind of the whole buzzard thing where you've got spot and somebody comes in on your spot. It's happened to everybody.
Yep.
How do you handle that situation, Travis?
I mean, I would like to think that, you handle it with class and all this stuff, but man, I've had some where I haven't ever gave anybody like an official cussing, but I've said some stuff. This spring I asked the guy if he wanted me to open the live well so he could just throw in the live well instead of just throwing right next to the boat. He didn't take that too well, but
that's pretty funny.
It didn't go over very well for him, but me and my buddy got chucked out of it. But no, I think that stuff, and I think you see it a lot more now with the forward-facing sonar, and a lot of times people, I didn't even see you there, man. I was just looking at the screen, I wasn't paying attention. I think that, forward-facing sonar, I showed you, there's fish in a lot of different places than we ever imagined. And now there's a lot more people fishing right on top of one another. I guess I'm still kind of that old school. Like if I see a guy fishing a bank, I'm not gonna pull in, 100 yards down in front of him and fish the same way he's going. Like I think there needs to probably be a little more like respect for other people. There's no need to be a jerk, to be a rude person and pull right in front of someone. I know you're like alluding to the Johnson's deal. And I don't know the whole story behind that. From everything that I've seen, I'm kind of like, man, I feel for Robert G, because that's, I was in a similar situation at Clark's Hill on day 3 when I had a big bag in contention to like possibly win. And there was a guy that came into the same area that I was in. And we got to talking, and I was like, yeah, man, like, dude, I've got a big bag right now. Like, I'm close to this thing. I can feel it, And that guy was super cool. He was like, look, you were in here before me. You got a chance at this thing. I'm just going to get out of here, And like, that's how it used to be, there's more respect, it seemed like, between people. And I don't know if you can blame the forward-facing sonar. Now everybody can see what is, what this guy's fishing out there in the middle. Before it might have been, you drive by and you're like, what's that loser doing out there in the middle of the lake?
Yeah.
You come in to weigh in, and that loser is actually the winner because he found something that no one else did, but I've never liked fishing in a crowd. I've always preferred to, kind of do your own thing and kind of stay away from people if at all possible. But I know there's situations that you're going to fish around people, and I've always said communication is always the best way. I mean, if you talk to someone and the other person's not a complete jerk, most times you can work something out, figure some sort of system out. Like, hey, look, I really don't care about fishing, the mouth of this. I was mostly just going to fish the back. And, that guy might say, man, I don't really want to fish the back. I'll just fish this spot. I'll fish the first couple docks in this pocket. And I don't worry about the other ones or whatever. But the more communication you can have with other people and try and keep it as polite as possible. Like I said, I've fell victim to not being so nice to people that I thought were encroaching on me or whatever, but you always strive to be, a little nicer and treat people how you'd want to be treated out there on the water. I'm sure, people that have pulled in on me wouldn't want me to pull in on them. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, I've a lot of times on some of these lakes, if I know there's a tournament, we have a lot of small lakes around here. If I know there's actually a tournament going on, I'll go choose a different lake to fish. Or if I happen to be out there, I didn't know there was a tournament. If I'm fishing a stretch or I want to fish a stretch, just like what you talked about, Travis, I'll ask those guys if they're fishing the tournament. And if they say, yeah, I'm fishing the tournament, and then I'll say, come on in, man. Come on in. I'm out of here. I'll go find someplace else to fish. I don't want to get in that person's way for the reason you just said. I know how it is on the other end of things. I'm just out here having fun. It ain't that big a deal. You're actually got money on the line, and that's a totally different thing. But the etiquette is something that, it's kind of like the man in the mirror. It starts with one person at a time. What are you? It only starts with you. Whoever you are. What actions you can control that part of it. And it's one of those deals where how you handle a situation transfers over to that person you handle that situation with.
I think
if you screw them, then they may think it's okay to go screw somebody else. It's just the way, especially with the youth, with the high school anglers and stuff. That's kind of been a problem. I think
they're also fishing like 700 boat tournaments too.
But not always. I mean,
yeah,
not always. And that comes back to the boat captain. What kind of etiquette is the boat captain teaching their students in the boat? That's huge, because that little learning period of those anglers' lifetime is going to transfer to the rest of their tournament fishing career.
Right, because they might not even make the connection to it. They just may subconsciously, their boat captain may pull in front of some people, and they just start fishing, and they go, well, yeah, that's just how you do it. That's how I was taught to do it. And I'd say that's probably why I don't like pulling in front of people, or if someone's in a pocket, I'll go to the next one or skip that one, wait to come back later or whatever. Just because that's how my dad, he taught me whenever we were fishing was, give other people space, don't cut in front of people, and because at the end of the day, do we want to win? Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're all there. But I would rather win. I would rather lose the right way than win the wrong way. I feel like.
Yeah.
What I've learned in tournament fishing in recent years, you better pull in on the juice.
Yeah.
Don't fish to the juice. You better pull in on it.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
If you got a stretch that you want to fish, you better pull in on it.
Yeah.
Don't stop 30, 40, 50 yards short because somebody's going to cut in on you.
Yeah.
So,
especially on a ledge lake. Kentucky Lake. Holy cow.
When that whole conversation started, the first thing I thought was TVA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think places like that are probably more susceptible to people operating and acting like that than, a place like Table Rock, Beaver, Bull Shoals kind of stuff. Because I know my first time to a TVA lake, I'm like, holy cow, that guy, he literally just stopped right there in front of me. Like, he's going to do that. And then you fish there more and you're like, that's just how they do it here. That's just part of the way it goes down, unfortunately, or whatever. I mean, it's just different places have different, I guess set of etiquette, or kind of the rules of the land.
I remember my first couple of trips down to Kentucky Lake was like you would hear the beeps as somebody rolled by you.
Yeah,
they slow roll you. They come
pirates
come down off the pad and you'd hear beep beep beep, and they were marking waypoints as they walked. They drove by and then fire back up again.
Yep. And you see them slow down for the next guy.
Yep.
That almost makes you want to follow them back to the parking lot.
Yeah, I mean that's the guy that spent all of his life on Kentucky Lake, and he's got 3,000 waypoints out there, and he found every one of them the hard way, or even the easy way. He found them. He put in the time, or did he go whole pirate? Who knows? But
hey, I got a serious question here as we wrap this up. Like one of the hardest things to capture with any kind of technology is the elusive Sasquatch. So I'm wondering if the actual forward-facing sonar transducer is capable of picking up a Sasquatch. If one was to swim by within 100 feet of your boat, do you think that it would actually pick up a Sasquatch, or do you think it would be just like any other trail cam out there where it's just one of those things that just cannot be picked up with technology?
I think forward-facing sonar, that'll be the technology that actually catches Sasquatch and puts him out on the map, is forward-facing sonar. They're so detailed now. I mean, you'll be able to, you can see what size feet he's got. I mean, you can tell exactly how tall he is. I mean, the whole nine. You'd be like, no.
But one thing I know that would happen is it would still be blurry, probably.
That's what I was just going to say.
It's a little bit of a blur to it.
All the hair, that's not going to give like that great of a return. But I mean, if you can see a little jighead minnow out there, Sasquatch he's done for. No hiding from that.
Do you think if you saw a Sasquatch on the forward-facing sonar, that you would you be able to contain your composure and cast a jig head minnow at it?
I'm probably not a jig head minnow. That's probably like the A-rig, maybe something.
Some with braid, probably.
Yeah, a little bit bigger line I mean, you're not going to catch him, but slow him down just a little bit, I mean, it's got to be, I've caught a couple spoonbill in my time, but it's got to be like, at least 10 times as strong as a spoonbill. So, I mean, these trolling motors are fast, but I don't know if they'd be that fast to keep up.
It'd be like a world record beaver. Every once in a while you see a beaver swim by and you're like, man, that'd be kind of fun to tangle with that thing for about an hour. You got to think about what you got tied on because you're probably not going to get it back.
No, this is a nice poplar. I'm not going to throw that over there. This Vixen that I've got on, no, that's probably not the bait I want to throw over there. That guy.
Yeah, I think if I saw something that big in the water, the trolling motor would be stowed away ASAP.
You're going.
And I would be on the big motor.
Except for your big motor's not that fast.
Yeah, I could only run 20 miles an hour, and Mr. Sasquatch might be able to swim that fast.
It depends on like because you'd be able to tell like what direction it's swimming. If it's swimming to you, I could see like, nope, it's time to go. We gotta go. I don't know what that is, but if he's swimming away from you and you're like, all right, I can meander and try and keep up with this thing.
So what's your bait selection for a Sasquatch?
I would have to say probably an A-rig.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, because you got all the hooks. You stand a lot better chance of snagging him. You could go pretty heavy on the jig heads to get it down there to him quick, and big line braid, lay it to him, and get the skis out.
Yeah, if you had like titanium wires,
Yeah.
You might be able to keep them contained for a little bit longer.
Yeah. Some of the similar stuff they had at Jaws, that's probably what you want to tangle Sasquatch with.
I'm thinking he'd kind of be like an alligator, though. He would probably pull you in the water.
Oh yeah,
and have his way with you, especially if you wrap the A-rig around the wrong thing.
You think do the death roll like a gator would, and just
probably
off right there? Yeah,
just snap your neck off. And
Sam says Sasquatch has a family too, wife and kids. Somebody said that
we have a sympathy for Sasquatch. I think it's the first time I've ever seen that.
Yeah, and that may be where the Sasquatch are hiding. They could be, they swim down and up into a cave under the water somewhere.
Yeah,
and that's why we're not seeing them on land.
So, well, they have UFOs. They theorize that UFOs live in the ocean. They're down at the depths of the ocean.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
The
Dog Days of Fishing.
Got a winner. The Dog Days of Fishing. Reach out to me on Facebook at Gabe Montgomery Fishing or 10 Horse Monty. And if you're an Instagram person, 10 Horse Monty 6, and I will get you a $25 Baitworks gift card, man. Thanks for everybody playing along. Yeah, I don't know, man. That'd be interesting. Matt Pangrack just got back from Scotland, and he actually fished on Loch Ness.
Really?
He went out in a boat for like I guess a half a day. And he asked the guide about the Loch Ness monster, and I don't think it was really that big of a deal to the locals. I think it's mostly like a tourist thing.
Yeah.
But somebody's making a killing off of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was thinking that,
for a deal like that, they should definitely get like a concrete, Loch Ness monster and sink it down, and then guys got forward facing sonar. And oh my gosh, what is that? Look at it, dude. You could charge whatever you wanted to for a Loch Ness site.
Hold on, you got to make it like super thin though. So
Yeah.
you only get it from certain angles. If you're front forward on from it, it's like, oh, what is that? It's a stump out there. You get around the side of it, it's like, oh crap, what is that?
There it is. We gotta go. Yeah.
That'd be hilarious.
My buddy Greg, a little bubbler or something on there where you're like, see, look, it's breathing. We gotta go.
Robotic neck that just goes up and down on it.
Yeah. You put a lithium battery in there. That sucker will keep moving for years.
You can run forever.
Because you have 125 amp lithium battery.
Yeah.
Just one single motor doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're on a gold mine. We just got to move to Scotland. My buddy Greg lives at Lake of the Ozarks. He's got a house there, and he threatened to do this, to go to a garage sale or a thrift shop and buy an actual mannequin and put a couple concrete blocks on the feet of the mannequin and sink it down in his boat stall.
Yeah.
For all the people that are forward-facing sonar.
And look over.
Dead body
suspended up. Hold on, you know how many like DNR officials you'd have at your dock within hours?
I'd give it 1 weekend before the FBI showed up at his house or the local police department, the sheriff's department.
You get a knock about 1 a.m.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said like the Sasquatch on the point for whatever lake, insert lake name, as you're coming in for the night tournament. Like,
yeah.
2 little red eyes. Somebody hits it with their spotlight or their light as they're coming by and sees 2 little glowing red eyes. Hey,
dude, there's the legend right there.
Yeah, the legend.
Could you imagine how many pistol shots would be going off on the way?
That's why I wouldn't do it. Somebody that dresses up.
You wouldn't want to do it around
the house. Just nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that? Stephanie said there was a black bear sighted at Kincaid. Apparently, they've been like releasing some black bears over in that area. I've never thought about it. I see a lot of bobcats. Over there. I'm always worried about my little dog Finley when I let her out. Because I could see a bobcat just flying out of the woods.
That's a
little snack for a 50-pound cat. Well, cool, man. Let's wrap her up, Travis. That was fun, dude. We covered a lot.
Yeah.
Only thing missing tonight was Connor. Kind of sucks that he wasn't on the film.
American. We talked about technology, but we couldn't talk to him because technology failed.
Technology let us down once again.
That's the part of it. I mean, like he was talking about, he's had an issue. That's what, as a frequent forward-facing sonar user, That's always like in the back of your head, like, all right, I push this button. Is this going to come on? It's came on every other time. There's going to be one time when this, no source. Then what do?
Yeah. You keep an extra graph in the boat or not?
Yeah, well, I run all around, so I can just swap the Ethernet from one to the other, and I keep a spare Ethernet, so if that ever went out from the black box to the unit, I could rig one.
How many transducers do you run?
I just got the one.
How many spare transducers do you carry?
I just have the one.
Yeah.
Probably not the best, idea, but knock on wood, hadn't failed me yet, so we're just gonna keep rolling with one.
Well, honestly, at the end of the day, it's not like they're a scarcity. It's not like you can't get them.
Right.
You can get one pretty quick.
Yeah.
Usually.
I mean, Table Rock does have like a mini Bass Pro on the water. So I mean, at the worst, you just call old Johnny up and say, "Hey, I need you to deliver one to me."
I don't have Johnny on speed dial. You must be playing a different ball game than I do.
I don't either, but I'm sure there's
somebody willing to sell you one on Table Rock. I promise.
Oh yeah, someone willing to make a couple $100 to drive one boat ramp.
Or full retail.
You can get Uber Eats at the boat ramp. So I mean, there's got to be some sort of mobile.
We got to have Uber Eats for like waypoint drop.
Oh, there we go.
Like,
no, here's what I'm going to do.
You're out there and it's like, here's my coordinates.
You go, hey man, I'm not catching them right now. Can someone out here tell me where to go find some bass right now?
Well, either that or I just need some Chick-fil-A. Like
there's also on Table Rock, there's a Pizza Hut right on the lake. They got a boat dock. You just pull up in there, walk up to the top, get your Pizza Hut, good to go.
Could you imagine what Pizza Hut delivery would cost on Table Rock?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they've got a dock.
You go
but I'm talking about. I'm catching them, and I need pizza now.
I'm not leaving the school.
I'm not leaving.
JG Wentworth with the Pizza Hut. It's my pizza. I want it now.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm spotlocked, baby. You bring it to me.
Call 1-800 Pizza Hut.
So here's my little genius ideal. If I ever win the lottery and retire from work, I would buy like a 40-foot. 50-foot houseboat or pontoon or something, and I would have an on-the-water tackle shop where I would troll around and people could call. It would be no different than a online retailer, but you'd be mobile on the lake.
You need to have like that would be your main hub, and then you got like one. It could just be like a 200 horse or whatever, just a bass boat that's like super fast. If you need it,
Yeah.
You're right.
You're down. You got the box store, and then you got the little.
Yeah.
Or if it really took off, say a place like Alhon or Lake of the Ozarks, you could have just like Big Bass. You could have somebody at Red Oaks, you could have somebody at Alhana, different sections of the lake, and you'd be within
like a
10 miles of everybody.
Snow cone shot or the ice cream truck for bass fishermen.
Yeah, well, you could just charge more. You'd be like, all right, would you like standard delivery, which is the full size pontoon, or do you want express delivery? 300 horse. Like how bad do you really need it?
I got a 99 and a 250, man. Yeah. How much you willing to spend?
Well, and so on top of all that, are you collecting? I mean, we're talking about hole buzzards. Are you collecting waypoints and reselling your waypoints then too?
If you're going through that area,
because if you're like, hey, I'm here at Lake of the Ozarks, and I just
dropped off tackle with Sephora. Like, here's his numbers.
Yeah. He was fishing this point, and I'm pretty sure he's throwing out a brush pile.
Right. I saw Travis at mile marker 6 right there on that main lake point. Yeah. Just telling you. How about a $5 tip?
And do you want to know the baits he was throwing?
Yeah. Do you want to know? Would you like to duplicate his order, or do you want to? Are you sure you want to buy those baits that you want?
Yeah, because my next delivery is I'm running some green pumpkin brush hogs over to him.
Yeah.
Just letting you know. Letting you know. And I do happen to have some extra green pumpkin brush hogs in the boat.
Wouldn't you know? I've got one extra pack.
I just happen to have one extra pack in the same color.
There's days on the to everybody's point here, like burgers, hot dogs. Like there's days in the lake that I would flag somebody down for a burger and a hot dog.
One of the coolest things I've ever seen on the lake. It was over in North Carolina. It was when I was working for Navico mapping the lakes, and out in the middle of the lake, this yellow pontoon. I mean, can't miss it. Pulls out to the middle, throws the the top up, like, and the boats just start flying to it. I'm like, what the heck's going on out there? So being curious, I go out there. It's a ice cream shop. They homemade ice cream. They had like biodegradable, like the little plastic bags, like the whole nine. You just pull up, give them some cash, free ice cream. It was like 100 degrees that day. So how are you going to say no to some cold ice cream? Oh, it was the best. I was like, man, why don't they do that around here?
You're going to cost me a lot of money this week.
Yeah. Oh, it's every day. It was like, yeah, you're out there working and you're like looking around. Where's that yellow pontoon again?
So when you were working for Navico, well, I guess you weren't like staring at the screen all day, were you?
Oh yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
How many things did you run into?
There's a story I could tell you, but probably not on here.
Fair enough. We'll talk later.
Probably occasional buoy.
I say that because dude, we're all guilty of like staring at the screen and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit.
Monotonous.
Grabbing for the.
We definitely have hit. I mean, you run into buoys. One of my coworkers, he called me with the Mayday. Hey, I'm going down. There was a storm rolling in, and he somehow hit this buoy and wrapped the anchor rope like 2 times around his prop. And so then shut his motor off. We didn't have any trolling motors or anything on the boat. So then his bow is pointed, with the wind, and it's just coming over the back of his boat. The waves are. And he called me. He's like, dude, get to me now. I'm going down. Like the bilge is not keeping up. And so I fly up there. We get him untangled, and yeah. I mean, stuff like that happens. I ran into bridges, house foundations, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, I can see it happening. I mean, I've damn near put it on the riprap before. So
yeah, no, I mean,
steep banks, you're just watching it, and all of a sudden it's like, there it is.
There we are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely almost idled into some boat docks while I was doing it. I mean, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you for having me on again, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a great time, man. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. We do this every Tuesday night at 8:00. So love to see you guys back here next week. Adios.
See y'all.